interview Mr. Tavius Ayton. So hello, Mr. Ayton.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So usually, like my other interviews, I will ask questions about your company, which is called Architectural Acoustics, and then some more questions about you, and maybe some questions about the special project, and finally some questions about your perspectives in the future. Okay? So my first question, sorry, is can you just present your company, which is called Architectural Acoustics? Acoustics. Sorry.
Yes, I started early that year, and I started it as a sales rep firm for acoustic materials in the architectural industry. So my job was to meet with architects and get them to specify the acoustic materials that I represented. Um, but my background is in acoustics since 2001 and also audiovisual since 2003, or actually 7, excuse me. So I had a company prior doing design build acoustics from 2005 to 2007, which was a design build acoustic firm, which I handled the design, the procurement of materials, and the project managed installation of projects. Then I went into AV, and then I went back into acoustics doing this architectural rep role. And what I did was I was able to pool on my industry contacts and build more business even outside of sales. What I found was that my experience in audio-visual integration along with acoustics was a very nice mix. There's a lot of audio-visual integration and systems that don't have any consideration for acoustical design. So the audio is often an issue in boardrooms, conference rooms, churches, these kinds of things. So the interesting thing is I had been in acoustics actually to be around audio because audio was my personal passion and my hobby, music production and radio. So acoustics was kind of like the closest I could get to being a professional in audio. So it's interesting that that turned into AV, and then now is basically I'm consulting in acoustics in large part for audiovisual projects. I will work with architects to develop acoustical requirements on plans and specifications, as well as integrators in AV who design build or end users that are looking for some kind of design, but a lot of times it crosses over into audio-visual right now.
Okay, yes. Okay, so you just asked my first two questions because the second was more about you. So yes, like your life was all about music and sound in general, and you went from acoustics to AV and etc. So like
Yeah.
lots of fields related to acoustics. So you said you founded your company. That's right. So can you tell me,
Yeah.
can you tell us more about it?
Oh, in 2011, I just finished working on Stanford Graduate School of Business, doing an audiovisual project managing job. It was a very large project, and I just finished that. And I had a friend in acoustics I had worked with previously. He heard I was done with that contract, and then he told me he was looking for someone else in the area to take over his position he had available, and that he would like me to consider it if I wanted to go back into acoustics. So it just kind of was kind of happenstance. It was just kind of it just kind of happened without me really trying for it to.
Okay.
So it was very organic, just a conversation that continued on and led to where I'm at today.
Okay. Wow, it's very interesting to hear about this. My next question is sometimes when I talk about acoustics to I mean average people, they tell me they don't know what it is, so I just have to explain. And sometimes I just use the example of music and sound because they know what it's about. I wanted to know why did you choose acoustics and sound in general, and maybe what did you study when you were young, like me, for example?
Right. So early on in my life, I was very into music. I would make lots of mixtapes, and for friends and these kinds of things before we had all the internet sharing and downloading. Um, and when I moved, I was actually went to Santa Clara University as a philosophy major, and then I started to design my own major in communications theory. And then ultimately, I dropped out of school and I moved up to San Francisco to pursue music and dance. So I was in the club rave scene around 1999 and the summer of '99, and then 2000 in San Francisco. I got a .com job at the time before 9/11, so the industry was huge up in San Francisco. There was a lot of fun and a lot of money, and a lot of music and a lot of dance. And when I left there, I came back to the South Bay in San Jose, and I started working as a radio DJ at my old college at Santa Clara, and I started working in acoustics. I had met a friend, Ed Bassanese, um, who had an office near where I lived, and we met in a gym where we both used to work out, and we had a friendship. And then I moved to San Francisco. So when I came back and he found me, he said, "Hey, I'm looking for someone to get into acoustics. Are you interested?" And I had done sales and things like that before, and of course, because it was sound, I was interested. Um, and so I started with West General in 2001 and continued the last 13 years in the industry.
Okay, yeah. So just for those who don't know this blog, I already interviewed Mr. Basanesi maybe about 1 month or 1 month and a half ago. It wasn't a video interview; it was just a written interview because he wasn't available at that time. And I'm interviewing Mr. Ayton thanks to his contact. So thank you, Mr. Basanesi, by the way.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so I can see that your work depends on relationships mainly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So over the last decade or more, I've been collecting basically contacts from all the industries, all the different industries, from manufacturers to architects, contractors, other consultants, and as well as integrators and end users. And when I started Architectural Acoustics, I created a database and I started using email marketing through Constant Contact. So I imported all my contacts, which is about 2,000, a little bit more. And so what I do is every month I create a informational, like informative, insightful email blast that talks about trends in the industry or new concepts or ideas. And so I send that out fairly regularly, and I get a very high percentage open rate. So I get around 350 to 400 people will open my emails to read, and then 2 or 3 dozen will actually click on links and go and check out different things that I'm sharing. So that's been a huge way to get back in touch with people I've known and to stay current with them over time, because not everybody has an acoustics project or application, but when they know somebody and something comes up, they can recommend or refer me. So most of my business has been repeat business or recommendations or referrals, just because I've been in the industry a while and I continue to stay in contact with my people.
Okay, that's very interesting what you're saying because I'm trying to do the same thing on my side. I just have like a little database of contacts in acoustics because I already tried to contact lots of companies, and every time I try to find some time to email the first people I interviewed, like Mr. McCreary for the first interview, or I'm regularly in contact with Mr. Basanisi. So yeah, I agree with you. It's very important. I wanted to move on to a very special part of you, maybe. What would you say when you look at what you did so far? What's your best project? Not maybe the greatest, or personally, what project did you like the most to do?
Well, I would have to say that I there's a few, but I'm gonna speak about one in particular. The first main job I had in acoustics, I had been at West General working with Ed Bassanese for about 8 months, and we had an opportunity working with Apple Computer to rebuild a test chamber, a hemianechoic test chamber. So basically a metal box on isolation rails with foam, like you see in a car commercial where they're showing like a car crash or something, but a smaller version of that. Um, and it kind of fell into my lap, and it was interesting because Apple had been contacting all these different manufacturers and consultants, and nobody wanted to do the project, and they happened to find us in the Yellow Pages, the phone book, and they had us come out, and they showed us a trailer, a semi-truck trailer, and they opened it up, and there was a bunch of large metal perforated panels just kind of stacked on each other, bent, and then a bunch of foam wedges that were old and yellowed and falling apart. They asked me, "Can you put this back together?" And I said, "Sure." You know, I didn't tell them I couldn't personally, but I knew enough people and resources to pull those people together to make it happen. So what I was able to do was get a contractor that was good with metal and an isolation rail salesperson to do the engineering and provide the rails. And then at the time we were working with Penta, formerly Ilbrook, and they provided the wedges and the engineering behind the wedges to achieve the results that they were looking for. So we rebuilt this chamber from like scratch, you know, bending panels back together and repainting and all this. And at the end of the project, the chamber looked like a brand new chamber, and it was able to exceed the engineers' issues and expectations from the previous installation before they broke it down. And that was just before the iPod was like basically going to get launched. So Apple was in a very like low spot in their career. They were about to become huge again. So it was kind of an interesting project because they didn't have a lot of money to throw around, and they were basically, you know, just saying, can anybody help me? But what this project gave me was street cred with the consultants, because when I would go meet with consultants in acoustics and talk about materials, you know, we would get around to talking, and then sometimes this project would come up, like, oh, what have you worked on? And I said, oh, I did an anechoic chamber for Apple Computer, and they said, oh, you're talking about, I wouldn't mention the name Apple, but I said I did a chamber, and they said it wouldn't be for Apple Computer, would it? And I'd say yes, because Apple had contacted everybody, and so everybody knew Apple was trying to put this thing together. So once I got that put together and I started meeting these other people in the industry, they were like very impressed with the fact that I was able to do what nobody else wanted to do. And that was 8 months into this career, and that success led to a very, very successful year following that, working with West General and Ed Bassanese. So it was my first real big signature project, and it bought me a lot of respect from the industry, particularly the consultants, which was good because that's who I learned from the most.
Okay, yeah, I can imagine that you must be very proud to say or to write on your resume that, yeah, I worked for Apple Computer, you know, the company just before the iPod, etc. I can imagine. I mean, for
Yeah.
someone very, very young like me, I'm always dreaming about Apple. This day I was reading websites about the iPhone 6 and the Apple Watch, so I'm very interested in this company as well now.
Yeah. They're
If I
building
could,
their headquarters is being built about 10 miles from here. So I live
oh,
right where Google, Facebook, and Apple are all located and headquartered, as well as many other companies, because I'm in Northern California, the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, where most technical companies have started and are headquartered. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on, technology and research and these kinds of things, which is fun.
okay. So for those who don't know me, you must know that outside being passionate about music and acoustics, I'm also very passionate about the tech world in general. So I'm really interested in what you're saying. But back to the interview, I wanted to know a little more about if you had someone, if you wanted to describe your job to someone, what would be the profile? I mean, what do you want to, if someone wants to do your job, what does he need to have in terms of qualities or etc. I don't know if you know, if you understand what I mean.
I believe I do. What kind of qualities does it take to become someone who works in this industry?
Yes.
Well, Obviously, it depends upon your background. I happen to have some background in architectural drafting in high school, and then DJing in clubs prior, so I knew sound in spaces and performance, and then being on radio and stuff. So I had a lot of kind of a taste of a lot of different areas that kind of factored in. So really, it just comes down to the opportunity to work because it's all about experience and it's all about who you get to know. It's not so much about education. Most every position, whether you're consulting or engineering, there's a sales aspect to it. I mean, you need customers and clients to have opportunities to make money. So ultimately, I think the most important thing is to be able to communicate clearly and effectively what you're talking about, and mostly know who you're talking to. Meaning, am I talking to an architect or a contractor or a consultant? Who are they? What are their needs? What are their concerns? And how do you talk to these people? Because a contractor and an architect are two completely different people, though they work together on the same goal. Well, kind of. So having a background and being able to communicate with different people is a big part of it. Understanding construction industry and architecture is a big help. But really, I think it's just getting exposure and being open to trying things and meeting people and learning things. I did a lot of listening. I did a lot of reading as far as talking to consultants and asking questions, reviewing their reports, and seeing what they're talking about and learning, and also just trial and error. I started providing materials and installing them and seeing how materials worked actually in the field. So I came from more of a practical standpoint where I knew what was available to purchase and I knew how it worked. So I could think about things differently than somebody who was trained in acoustics, for instance, who may not even know about this particular material that I know about and would never really think outside the box to use it in this particular way. So I got a lot of good momentum with consultants because they knew I understood how materials worked. So when they had a situation they didn't know what to do, they'd call me and say, hey, do you have any ideas? Do you have any thoughts about how we can do this differently? Because I can't figure it out. And it was more my knowledge in selling the materials and in installing them and in seeing them work that basically gave me the foundation to get to where I am now. So it's a little different, but it's all about understanding your role in the industry and who you're talking to and how to talk to them. I think that's the most important thing.
Okay, thank you. That's very interesting. It's funny because you're talking about how much the experience counts in your job, and I think it's the perfect example to show the differences between our two countries, because in France we pay a lot of attention about education, how much it's important to get a real job, and on your side you're saying that for you it was mainly the experience that accounts for your success today. So it's very interesting to distinguish these two ways of thinking.
Well,
Yeah.
if I might add too, one of the biggest differences in acoustics between Europe and America is that America is about creating opportunities and quick selling. So it's all about profiting. So construction in America, especially California, is very quick. And it's about bottom line budget, and it's about turning profit. So it's about recycling, creating and selling, creating and selling. It's not about having a space that's engineered to exist for a long time, owned by one person, having one purpose. So, that's a huge issue because people never really want to think about design issues like acoustics or these other things because they have no budget for it, because the industry is about quick money and quick building and quick turnaround. So a lot of the things that should be considered are not. And a lot of the architects that are designing these projects do not have any experience, hardly whatsoever, especially educationally, with acoustics. So here they are designing these spaces without any acoustics in mind. So the project gets built, and then what happens is the end user or the person using the space usually has to complain and then somebody to help them figure it out. And then it gets done after the design. And often in design phase, a lot of this stuff, like I worked on a project recently, a lot of the stuff that I suggested, they had to value engineer out. They had to take it out because they couldn't afford it. So in the end, there's all these things that have been recommended, and it's a matter of what can they afford, you know. And
Mhm.
it's such a tough thing with acoustics because it's not tangible. You can't see it, and people don't pay attention to hearing things in that particular way. So it is very different.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think people understand the acoustical problem when they can feel the noise and the disturbance due to this noise. But when there's a great job, I feel that sometimes people just can't see it or can't hear it. So it's a little frustrating. But I think the acousticians and acoustical consultants in general know when there's a great work. Okay, now let's move on to the third part. I want for each interview, I try to know something special about a company. You talked about your project for Apple Computer. I wanted to know if there is maybe if your company is specialized, sorry, in a special field in acoustics. I was talking previously about acoustics for performing arts with Mr. McCreary. Maybe you are specialized in a certain field.
Well, yeah, I'm getting more and more opportunity in audio acoustics because of my background and experience and contacts in audio visual integration. So a lot of the consulting I'm doing right now is for existing audio systems that aren't working, that don't sound well. An integrator wants to know, basically what needs to be done to improve the audio, which usually comes down to some field testing, some acoustical treatment recommendations, and often moving and relocating um, and changing the speaker locations and directions and or types of speaker. So audio acoustics is kind of where a lot of my business is. Um, Another project I'm working on is for a film production studio inside of a company that wants to make educational videos to put on YouTube to promote their company. So in that situation, it's another audio environment, an AV environment, and I'm called in to create that space that they can use for what their purpose is. So right now, a lot of it crosses over into audio, but I'm also working in Performance Hall in Arcata, California, which is North California. It's a community center, performing arts center. So that space is more tied to a school district and a local community. And I'm working with an architect directly on that. That project's been going on for almost 2 years because there's the design phase and construction phase and all these things. So these jobs are more long term in the public sector. So there's that kind of thing that's ongoing, and then there's these other jobs that are kind of come in and help somebody create an environment for audio mainly, and then be done with it. But it's a lot of that work is after the fact, or retrofits. So they're trying to create a space within a space that's not conducive to the purpose. For instance, the video production suite was going to be in a regular office room, and there's a fitness center on one side, and it's making a lot of noise because you can hear weights and aerobics and music and stuff. So basically, we had to create a room within a room. So they're building a room within that room that's going to isolate the surrounding environment. And also, a train that is across the street comes through fairly regularly. So we're building a room inside of a room to create that isolation necessary so that they can do the audio video recording and be able to do a very good job with it.
Okay, yeah. So if I sum up, your main challenges for you are especially to create a new room to reduce the surrounding noise. So you talked about the fitness center and the train. So how do you do to reduce this noise?
Right. Well, most noise in these situations is acoustic and vibrational, but it's about structure. It's about structure. It's about materials. It's about density of materials, and it's about how the materials come together in the environment. Um, so if there's not a huge, if it's not a very let me say a very technical research facility, working in lower frequencies. If it's more typical where you're dealing with train noise and other commercial noises, then you're not really having to worry as much about the ground because the ground transmit vibrations from the surrounding area. So the ground is minimal in these situations. So what it comes down to is creating basically a box which will isolate the surrounding sounds and contain the sounds within, but also within the box to have it shaped and finished in a way that helps to promote the clarity of sound and speech intelligibility, which have a lot to do with reverberation. And sometimes in higher end audio situations, diffusion and even scattering of sound throughout the environment, and then some reflection. So these different things are often considered inside the room, but really what it comes down to is that the room's buttoned up tight and that it's sealed very well, similar to how you'd want to seal something for maintaining heat or air in a space. And then it's about density of and distance between materials and airspace between materials, and then it's also how many points of contact do you have from one point to another, and how can you reduce that, because once sound hits a structure, it becomes vibration and it goes every direction. So you have to be able to contain that in some way and keep it from traveling within the space. So you have to think about a lot of different things to do that.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting to hear you saying this. And so, is this project finished right now, or still?
This video production suite project is about to start construction, so it's not finished.
Okay.
I've done my analysis and I've produced my report and I've made my recommendations. So a lot of my work is done, but now I like to see the project through and make sure that they are getting it installed correctly and that they're going to be happy with what they're doing.
Okay, yeah, I assume you stay in touch with them to make sure that everything is still okay, depending on what you say in your report, I suppose.
Well, that, and I also come out on site when they're going to start installation, and I meet with the labor contractor who's going to build it and make sure they understand the details, because there's certain details that could be overlooked or not done correctly that can jeopardize the integrity of the sound system or sound wall. So there's a few things I like to talk to them about, and I want to make sure they're comfortable with what they're doing, because some of these things aren't typical in construction. They're different, and so contractors out here are often very specialized, and they do one kind of thing very well, very frequently, and are used to that. And then when you get a contractor to take a look at something they do all the time, and you ask them to look at it differently, then they're not sure what to do. So they need to be ensured that they understand, because otherwise they'll put a bunch of money on there to cover themselves, and they won't be affordable, or they'll get in there and they'll do it some other way that they want to do it because that's how they figured they could do it and not do it correctly. So I always got to get out there and ensure that the people working on the project know exactly what needs to be done and how to do it, to try to ensure that what it is I've suggested gets done.
Okay. Okay. So yes, it's very interesting to hear you talking about this project, and as well for the Apple project, because there are two different projects, and I suppose every time it was like very different challenges and very different scales, because Apple was like a great company, and maybe this one was maybe smaller, I assume. So it's very interesting to see the different companies you can work with. And the final part of this interview, because it's almost the end, is about the perspectives. And I always ask these two questions to all the people I interview. The first one is, what are your short-term projects? I mean, what are maybe your current projects with architectural acoustics, or do you know some projects, if you can tell them, if it's not confidential?
Well, I have the ongoing Performing Arts Center I mentioned. I'm still working on this video production studio in the commercial space. But right now, I don't have any like I don't really have any new projects that are starting that I can speak of. I have a lot of things that are waiting for the right time. So the things I've already discussed are pretty much what I'm working on right now. A few other things as well, but I think more interesting is what my future plans are. I've been developing a privatized line of acoustic materials to be packaged for the audio-visual industry specifically. So I basically am taking my AV and my acoustics experience together to combine to create a product line that's very specific for the needs of the AV industry. And because they work with audio all the time and they don't have a very strong understanding of acoustics, I want to make it easy for them. So I am creating a product line that is boxed for specific applications like studios, theaters, conference rooms, so that it's very easy for someone to understand what can be bought, how much they need. Because it's all about how much of the right stuff are you putting in there when
Yeah.
it comes to reverberation in most room situations, and where is it located? You know, how
Okay.
much, where is it located? The two most important things when dealing with room acoustics. So making sure that they have options in the finishes and options in what's going to work acoustically, and then that they have enough material to actually make the difference. So my longer term goals is bringing that product line to market um, in the AV vertical, and then building that with global distribution. So I'm kind of product marketing and creating, as well as doing some global sales stuff. So I'm always trying to pull together different opportunities and experiences and create new things because I'm very creative and artistic and musical as well. So business is creative, just like everything else in my life. So I find opportunities and I pull resources together to 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 succeed in those opportunities, and I keep my eyes open and my ears open, and I keep in touch with people, and I like to work with um, making things happen and problem solving. I like to be able to come and help people and gather the team to do so, and that's really what gets me these opportunities, and that's why they're all very different as well.
Okay, yeah. So it's funny because once again you answered to my next questions, which was what are your long-term projects? Obviously now you are focused on launching your new line of acoustic material, and just just what, ouch, sorry. When will you launch this new line? If there are some people
Well,
interested in it.
yeah, I've been working on it over the last year and a half, almost 2 years, and it's very close. But there's a timing factor. There's a timing factor in a lot of things. So it's a matter of some of the factors right now, a little bit, before I'm going to move forward. So there's things in the industry, things with manufacturers to consider, and things within my own personal resources and bandwidth to consider. So there's a lot of variables. So the variables are lining up, and it's a matter of pretty much just pulling the trigger and starting it because everything's in line. It's just a matter of the timing. Timing is very important in these things, making sure I have enough resources, time and energy and money to do what needs to get done to make it successful. So everything's ready to go. As far as when it's going to launch, maybe before the end of this year. That was the goal, but definitely into next year, and that will become a main focus of mine.
Okay, so finger crossed for the end of this year.
Yeah,
And
that's the idea.
okay, and the last part of the interview, I mean the very last part of the interview, I always ask this to the speaker I interview is what would you say to some students like me who wants to work in acoustics, or maybe you talked about the differences between Europe and America. So on my website, I want to share my project of working in America. So what would you say to students like me who wants to work in acoustics and maybe abroad?
Well, it's one thing if you're going to want to work in design, obviously you're going to want a degree. Unless you're independent like myself. So I don't have a degree specific to acoustics, but I'm able to work in acoustics from experience. And so having the degree in acoustics, but I think also depending upon the kind of acoustics you want, you probably want to look at mechanical engineering or architectural design as maybe a minor or a secondary degree, because it will allow you to get farther quicker. So consultants tend to go more towards architectural or more towards vibration and mechanical stuff, but a lot of them do both. But the good consultants tend to focus on a particular side in an area, do that very well. So what I would say is education is important to get the foot in the door, but most important is knowing people. So doing something like you right now, where you're reaching out to people in the industry, and you're making contacts, and you're getting yourself out there, and you're building your name. That's a huge deal, because you go through school and then you get your degree, and then it's like, now what do? I got to get a job. And I mean, you could be like anyone else and just be filling out job applications or calling people and being, hey, do you want somebody? That takes a while and it can work. But when you already know people in the industry, you could start working on, where do I want to be and what do I want to do and who do I want to do that for, and have more options. So I say, continue with the education. Most importantly, build these contacts and investigate the industry and learn as much as you can about it. And honestly, if you're going to go into consulting, you're going to start you're going to start as an associate on the bottom. So you don't make very good money initially in the industry when you first get a job, because you're doing a lot of work for the guy who's above you, who's selling the job. So the idea is really to get in with a good consulting company, a good consultant, learn everything you can from them, and build as many contacts as you can in the industry, so that when the time comes, if you want to do something different or move somewhere else, you have contacts and people and that's very attractive to other companies. Or you can do like myself and some of my friends, and you can become independent and do your own thing, which is ultimately the best thing ever. Absolutely the best thing ever is working for myself. Except I'm not always as disciplined as I'd like to be, but I get to do what I want to do when I want to do it, and I'm very thankful for that. So getting to the point where you can be independent, I think, is a great place in this industry. Then you control who you work with, who you work for, how much you want to charge, what projects you do, and you're not necessarily sitting at a desk doing whatever work needs to get done every day. But that's where most people start, So good firm or a good consultant that's focused primarily in the area you want to go, because everybody says they can do everything and they don't always do it very well. And then learn as much as you can from them and try to make as many contacts as you can. Work on those projects and meet the clients, meet these different people, and get to know them. Because ultimately, that could be your future.
Okay, that's very interesting, because I was thinking about the same thing. We are in September. In June, I have to do an internship, and then in next January, I have to do a second internship, and that it will be the end for my school. So in like 1 year and a half, it will be done for me with education. So I will have to find some work. So I really try to find some ways to be out of the average engineers that will leave the school like me in the next year. So that's why I'm doing all this work and all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're doing a really good thing, and it's good for you. It's good for me. It's good for the industry, because you're helping spread the word, and you're helping people have a voice, and you're helping raise awareness, and you're meeting people, which is the huge part of it. So, everything you're doing here, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I must admit, I met a lot of interesting people with this project. If I just can add a last thing, I just before doing this interview, I just checked your website, and I saw that your catchphrase on the website is bringing integrity to integration. So can you just explain it a little more to the people who are watching the video?
That's great. That's a great question. So integration is typically, a term for technological systems being designed and installed in areas, whether they're IT or audiovisual or whatnot. So integration is basically design, build technology systems installed. So integration is associated more with audiovisual integration or audiovisual companies. And because audiovisual companies are working in audio, but they don't understand acoustics, they're selling systems. They don't understand the environment of the audio system. So they're designing audio systems without understanding what that audio system is going to do in the environment it will be installed. So a lot of times people are spending big money to get these great systems, but they don't work well because the room isn't treated appropriately with the proper acoustics. So it's almost like a lot of money and investment and heartache is because there's a lack of understanding of acoustics and a lack of consideration of acoustical design in the audio industry. So by actually designing systems with the room in mind, you're actually bringing the integrity of creating a system in a space that's meant to work together. So that's how the integrity is part of integration in my mind. Is you're not designing systems and just selling them. You're designing systems and you're installing them in a particular environment. And you need to design that system for the environment as well as the needs of the client. And then that's integration with integrity.
Okay, very interesting. So your company builds systems, I mean, specific for, I mean, they are unique. If you can sum up, every system you build or every project you take part, it's very unique, I suppose.
Say that again. It's very what?
I'm sorry. It's unique. I mean, every project is different. That's what you call integrity to integration, I suppose.
Yeah, I think every project needs to be seen as an individual project, and I think one of the big problems in design is people not actually going out in the environment or understanding the environment and just assuming that one system that worked over here will work over there, when that may not be the case at all. So yeah, it's always very unique because it may be a similar system, but it's never the same room or environment.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so it's done for me. If you want to add some more thing, if you want to, I don't know, promote your website, promote something, you do. It's your time. If you want to say something.
No, I think we've spoken about a lot of great things, and I'm just happy to participate.
Okay. Okay. So thank you very much, Mr. Ayton. Thank you very much for your time, for your answers, which were very interesting. And for the people who are interested in his company is called Architectural Acoustics, and I will detail more the interview in the blog post, and then you can see the link below in the days to come. So thank you once again, Mr. Ayton.
You're welcome.
Thank you, and hope to see you soon. Maybe if I come to the US next summer. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be awesome. I do. I look forward to hearing more about your journey.
Okay, thank you very much, and goodbye to all of you who watched the video. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.